What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another video. Now, this is the 2021 iPad Pro with the Apple M1 chip built in. And if you watched our review over it, you'll know that I think it is an incredibly powerful iPad Pro. As a matter of fact, it is the most powerful iPad Pro ever released, but whenever it comes to the software department, it feels like it's pretty limited, I'm not gonna lie. Now, this has generally been the case for the iPad Pros, at least in my opinion, for the past couple of years now. We've all been kind of waiting for Apple to kind of step up their game in terms of the software that runs on the iPad Pros, and this year it was no different. This particular iPad Pro was released just a couple of months before Apple was going to announce iPadOS 15 at WWDC, which kind of left us all in suspense, especially myself, because I was kind of hoping that Apple had this grand plan to unveil this incredible new overhaul whenever it came to these iPad Pros, at least from a software perspective. Now, I have been running the iPadOS 15 beta for a little over a month now, and I think I'm on public beta 6, maybe public beta 7. Honestly, I'm not keeping track at this point, but I am using this iPad Pro on a daily basis, and it may not have been the huge overhaul that I was hoping for. But either way, Apple has made some changes to iPadOS that make it even more fun to use on a daily basis. So let's spend some time talking about what's new in iPadOS 15 and ultimately what this means for the direction of iPadOS moving forward. Let's go ahead and start with something that's super simple, but also something that's super noticeable because it's right on your home screen. So yeah, there have been some changes made to the home screen in iPadOS 15 that now allow you to place widgets anywhere on the home screen, which is really nice because that wasn't an option available to you in iPadOS 14, although it was available to you in iOS 14, so I'm not really sure what the delay was here. But yeah, you can now place a pretty decent amount of widgets anywhere you want on the home screen, which are going to be really nice for telling you relevant information without you necessarily needing to open an app. Now, for me personally, I have my iPadOS or my iPad laid out in a way where all of my apps are on my first page, and then all the widgets that I want to use are on the next page. Now, that's just my personal preference. Obviously, you're going to place widgets wherever you want, but it is nice to see that now, instead of just being a dedicated section for widgets on the iPad, you can now place them anywhere on the home screen. Now, at the furthest most home screen, basically once you keep swiping to the fact that you have no pages anymore, is the integrated app library for iPadOS. And this is also cool too. It pops up in a really nice animation from the bottom right corner of the screen, and it has all of your applications grouped into little folders based on the category of app that they are. So overall, the changes to the home screen are actually pretty nice. When it came to the widgets, I kind of had this weird feeling of it was like excitement, but at the same time, it wasn't excitement, if that makes sense, because I have used Android tablets in the past, and adding widgets to any part of your screen has been a thing on Android for like, I can't even give you a feasible number because it's been so long. So it was weird to see something like this on the iPad. It felt new for like half a second, and then I realized that this probably should have been here a long time ago, but either way, it's really nice to see it here now. Multitasking has also been, let's say, redesigned in iPadOS 15. It's important to remember that from a feature perspective, there's nothing new here in terms of how multitasking works with iPadOS, but Apple changed it up in terms of how easy it is to remember how to multitask between multiple applications now on iPadOS, because I don't know about you, and you can tell me in the comment section if maybe I'm just the weird one here, but I couldn't remember for the life of me the gestures or how to properly initiate multitasking on iPadOS 14. It seemed like it was more hidden than it should have been, and I think Apple recognized that as well, and they've changed it here. So now, anytime you open an application, you'll see a little menu at the top of your screen in the form of 3 little dots, and that menu enables you to multitask with different applications. Now, whenever you launch multitasking, you have 3 different options. You can have a full screen app, which is how you normally use applications. You can split screen between 2 applications, and you can also have slide over multitasking. Slide over is the multitasking option that kind of changes your app to condense down to the size of almost like a little iPhone screen on your iPad, and you can move it all around the screen while you have different applications open behind it. It kind of reminds me of how you can reduce window sizes on macOS, but it's not as obviously desktop featured like something like that. I personally don't know too many people who use slide over. I don't use slide over. I actually get a lot more use out of splitting the screen between two apps. But hey, it's all here and it's a lot easier to use now, which is nice to see. There are certain applications, the only one I've noticed so far is Safari, that now have the ability to not only have multiple tabs, but you can have multiple instances of the application running as well, which means that you can have multiple instances of Safari open with multiple tabs in each instance, and then you can split those instances on your screen as well. So if you are someone who just likes to consume a whole bunch of information on Safari, then that particular feature is going to be awesome. And hopefully, as iPadOS comes to a public release, we'll see more app developers integrate a feature like that for their particular applications as well. So yeah, multitasking is easier to remember now, which is good to see. One application that I wasn't expecting to get so much use out of, nonetheless expecting Apple to actually make some feature enhancements to it, is the Notes application. So there's one really cool feature that is now built into Notes called Quick Note. You can swipe towards the center of your screen from the bottom right-hand corner using either your finger or your Apple Pencil, and the iPad will launch what's called a Quick Note. Now this is for you to jot down something super quick, hence the name. And the cool part is that you can draw on the Quick Note right away if you're using your Apple Pencil. So there's no fumbling around with like a drawing UI or anything like that. You launch the note, you can start handwriting right away with the pencil, or you can start typing if the iPad's connected to a keyboard. Now the cool part about Quick Note is you'll see neat little features pop up depending on what you're doing with the iPad as you launch a Quick Note. So let's say I'm in Safari and I'm on a website. If I launch a Quick Note while I have that website open in Safari, the Quick Note will immediately give me an option to add a link to that website in case I needed to come back and visit it later. If you have an application open that has an object that you can, let's say, drag and drop, you can drag and drop that object into the Quick Note as well, which is really cool. Now, one particular feature that I found super awesome is that if you're on a website that has text that you can highlight that text and then you can add it to your Quick Note. Now the cool part is that Apple will save a link to that particular website and your highlighted text. Fun little tidbit or shout out for my coders and developers out there. The Swift Playgrounds application now has the ability for you to just natively code inside the application. Now I have used Swift Playgrounds as kind of like an intro to coding program just because coding and programming has interested me to a certain extent, so I wanted to try it. Now when Apple announced this feature coming at the keynote, I found it super exciting. So when I upgraded to iPadOS 15, I launched Swift Playgrounds. I found the little section that you have to go to write your own code, and then I quickly remembered I don't know how to code. So if you're someone out there who knows how to code, you can now natively code in Swift on the iPad Pro and create applications for the iPhone and the iPad. And the cool part is that you can actually publish your application directly to the App Store from Swift Playgrounds. And you can run and test your applications from Playground as well, which is, I think, something that's super awesome for those of you out there who are interested in coding. And of course, a lot of the cool enhancements that are coming to iOS 15, like things like recognizing text in photos, and some of those awesome enhancements that are going to be making their way to FaceTime are also going to be coming to iPadOS 15 as well. And if you haven't seen our video over iOS 15, we'll leave a link for you to check it out. I'm really excited for a lot of the new stuff that's coming in iOS 15, and it's going to be coming alongside some new iPhones, so doubly excited from that perspective. But let's get back to iPadOS 15 because honestly, it's hard for me to even put into words how I feel about iPadOS 15. And truth be told, it's going to all be about your perspective on the operating system. I honestly went into iPadOS 15, especially on something really powerful like this iPad Pro, expecting it to hopefully turn out to be a replacement for something like a MacBook Pro, a machine that you could rely on for essentially anything because it's loaded with so much power. And it even, in some cases, benchmarks better than some of Apple's current MacBook Pros that clearly run a desktop class operating system. But it's not the case. But the good thing is that Apple is still focusing on enhancing iPadOS and making the experience better for everyone year over year. And that's really the important part, right? Because the iPad Pro is not the only iPad in existence. Apple has an entire iPad lineup that's meant to fit a lot of different iPad buyers. And not to mention, iPads are now being used in a lot of businesses and even schools. So a lot of these features that are coming to iPadOS 15 that are going to hit those iPads are going to be really, really useful. But if you're looking at something like an iPad Pro from the perspective of replacing a computer, kind of like I was, you may be a little disappointed. But if you step back, kind of readjust the perspective, and take a look at iPadOS for just what it is and the feature set that it brings, it's still really, really capable. And with each iteration, it becomes more fun and easier to use. Not to mention, it's still an incredible tool for folks that are into digital media, like art, drawing, design, things like that. So overall, it's still really, really capable, and it's still a really, really good operating system, but it all depends on how you look at it. Either way, I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you hit like and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching. We have a ton of content coming up on the channel, so make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace. You can split screen between two applications, which is pretty dope. And you can also use, what is it called?
Side view, slide view, slide.
That's not it.